In this forecast, another huge pattern change is coming to the United States next week, which may bring some severe weather and maybe some snow. And several areas may drop below 30 degrees next week. And Tropical Storm Julia is about to become a hurricane and make landfall in Mexico. All of that and more is coming right up. Let's first begin with that pattern change that's expected across the United States heading into next week. But beginning first with what's going on right now, we have a lot of cooler weather ongoing in the northeastern portions of the United States, including the Ohio Valley. And if you've been outside, you may feel it. You probably need a jacket if you're back up there in the northeast. But eventually, going over the next several days, we'll begin to see some improvement. So going to early next week, it looks like we'll get closer to average for this time of the year. And not just that, but maybe even a little bit above average for those in the Ohio Valley, northeast, and midwest. But the big change comes going to Wednesday and Thursday. Well, you kind of look back out here to the west real quick. That is a little sector of cooler air. It doesn't look crazy, but that's actually going to be the leading edge of a cold front that is going to be back up in Canada. Basically, we'll have a trough back up in Canada. Cooler weather will begin to usher down out of Canada going into Wednesday, but eventually into Thursday, it'll become a lot more pronounced. We'll have an intensifying low pressure system just to the north of the Great Lakes. That will bring much cooler weather to areas across the Midwest, and it could again bring even potentially a little bit of isolated flurries or snow. So we could begin to see a little bit of wintry precipitation heading into potentially late next week into maybe even the weekend. So what does this all mean in terms of precipitation? Well, beginning with Monday of next week, we're not going to see really anything. High pressure will be dominating a large portion of the United States, but eventually heading closer to Wednesday and Thursday, you can begin to notice that we'll see a cold front, very pronounced as well, with this low pressure system back up in Canada. That will bring the potential for maybe a little bit of wintry precipitation on the back end, maybe in northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, and maybe the upper Michigan Peninsula. But more importantly, there could be potentially some severe weather all across areas, again, from maybe even the Midwest all the way back down through northeast Texas. So this will be something to watch for very closely as we head into Thursday of next week. And again, all modes of severe weather is definitely not out of the question with this system. Eventually by Thursday into Friday, that low pressure system kind of sits back up just north of the Great Lakes. We begin to see a lot more shower and storm activity from New England all the way back down through the East Coast, could even reach as far south as Florida, and eventually heading into the upcoming weekend. A lot of uncertainty from there, but we very well may see that low pressure system maybe impact New England further than what it already will. A little closer look at the Midwest as well. This is Wednesday afternoon. Storm activity is expected most likely going into late Wednesday into Thursday morning. Again, severe weather is definitely possible. We can't really give you an outlined area yet though on where you will see severe weather, what threats you'll see. It's a little bit early on that, but we'll keep you updated with the latest because again, things may change as we begin to get closer. Also looking through the Ohio Valley going into Tuesday, we'll see some scattered showers back up to the northwest. Eventually going into Wednesday, we'll begin to see that storm activity line up along that cold front. Again, this is about Wednesday night, so we'll begin to see some showers and storms down into areas in the south and as well as the southeast through the Ohio Valley into the Midwest, and eventually going to Thursday, all that storm activity begins to move to the east, and we'll begin to see that cooler air ushering in behind that cold front. So those again in the Ohio Valley definitely going to feel a difference in terms of temperatures. Now the instability across the United States, going to show you a little look at this. This will give you an idea of where we may see some severe weather. There is going to be an increased amount of instability from about Minnesota back through Texas going to late Tuesday and to early Wednesday, but eventually going to Wednesday into Thursday, this is where instability will be. So it looks more likely than not, if there were to be any severe weather, it would likely be on the leading edge of that cold front or potentially in the southern and southeastern portions of the United States, closer to areas like Louisiana, back through about Georgia. So those will be areas to watch for very closely. Quick look at the watches and warnings. We do have freeze warnings in effect for those across areas in the Midwest. There's also ongoing watches back at the bottom right of your screen for those in Kentucky, Ohio, as well as West Virginia. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you're bringing that sensitive vegetation tonight. Now, we do have an important update on Tropical Storm Julia. You may have heard about this. It's actually in the Caribbean Sea. Yes, not far away from the United States. However, there is a big high pressure system dominating areas over Florida. So that is keeping this system going to the west instead of towards the Gulf of Mexico. So good news there, but look at this system. I mean, there's a lot of deep convection right now, and this is all heading towards Central America right now. This is the National Hurricane Center's track. So as I mentioned, there's a high pressure system kind of at the top side of your screen that is steering this into areas in Central America. That is why we're not going to see this tropical storm, which is eventually going to be a hurricane potentially as early as today, and it'll eventually crash into areas just north of Costa Rica, going into most likely tomorrow morning as a hurricane. And there are currently hurricane warnings in effect there across the coastline, but it'll eventually by Monday still be a tropical storm. It may go into the Pacific Ocean. That is the current forecast, and it may re-strengthen there, but it seems unlikely as of now. It may also turn back up into the Gulf of Mexico, but that also seems pretty unlikely right now, but we'll keep you updated with the latest on anything that you need to know about that. Also, quick look at the temperatures going into Friday morning. For those in the Midwest, it will be cold again. We're talking upper 20s and low 30s. Keep that in mind. Bring your sensitive vegetation in if you've not already. Those areas have already seen frost. Going into Friday afternoon for high temperatures, it'll be much cooler with that cold air back up in the Midwest and as well as even through New England. But also, there's hardly any areas really in the 90s other than the southwestern portions of the United States for those in Arizona and California. So big improvements across a large area of the United States. Even Florida, only in the low 80s for highs. Make sure to like button down below, subscribe if you've not already. This forecast is brought to you by Platinum Contracting.